Welcome to another episode of Reseller Evolution. This is podcast number 7, and I'm Scott.
And I'm Carl.
And today we're going to talk about sourcing. What do you think of that, Carl? Sourcing.
Oh, that's one of the questions we get all the time. At least I do. Like, where do you get your stuff? How do you find it? Like, where do you find the awesome things?
Yeah, I agree with that. And what were you going to say? Sorry?
And I was going to say, it's just something that's always evolving. And there's a whole bunch of things I've never even tried that we might mention. Because it can be a little hard to, try new things. Because some of the ways of sourcing are the best, but also kind of the most nerve-wracking in a way.
Yeah, I've done a fair amount of different types of sourcing. I obviously haven't done everything, but I'm very happy with the results I've been getting. I hear people say, and I heard Craigslist Hunter talk about this the other day, that a lot of it times depends on the area you live in. So maybe I just live in a very fortunate area. I think I've heard you say that kind of stuff before as well. This area, I'm very, very fortunate. But what's your area like? Just the area overall. What do you think?
Well, our area has really been going since it was founded maybe 18 something, but really it started going 1920s. But we're also in Ottawa, we're a fairly wealthy city. So the stuff I find is going to reflect that. We're also near Quebec. So occasionally we're going to get real antiques from Quebec coming in. Not that often, but it's not impossible. How about you, Scotty?
Yeah. I mean, age-wise, I mean, there's a lot of history here, but it's not even just about that. It's just, and you also mentioned wealth. I just find this area has a huge mix of just about everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it has an age. It has a lot of new development. It has a lot of wealthy people, a lot of history with farming and business. And so there's that aspect. And there's a lot of middle class. And there's a lot of, I wouldn't even say a lot. There's some lower income households. But most of those are in the form of rentals and stuff like that. So I don't really find a lot of stuff there. It's more of the older homes, maybe. But regardless of what it is in that regard, there's just yard sales are great. Yeah. Private picks are great. Because it is a small town. A lot of people from the cities are coming in and buying up homes. So they're just getting rid of a lot of stuff. It's probably per capita, it's higher than in the senior citizens, like 65 and older type thing. So a lot of times they're downsizing, or if unfortunate, they've passed away and their kids are selling the contents for very cheap because their money's all tied up in the property and they got to get rid of it and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways to source around here.
Yeah, and it's really going to depend where you are. We hear a lot that, like, if you're in the Saskatchewan, for example, you're going to have maybe more access to farm equipment, access to like old oil bottles, stuff like that, as opposed to here in Ottawa. Well, we're not going to have as much farming stuff, but we might find high-end KitchenAid stuff here because we have the density of people buying it, so that it actually shows up at the stores on occasion, right?
And just to kind of add on to that, I am in a farming community. This whole area is based on farming. At one point, probably in the 50s, 40s, up until probably the 80s, it was very big on the tobacco farming. Right. This whole area was tobacco farming. So what happens there? So you got old farmhouses full of just older stuff. You got barns because these guys tended not to throw a lot out. A lot of times they just packed it into the barns for whatever reason. So sometimes you can run into barns full of this stuff, right? So
yeah, so it's interesting all the different ways we're going to source. So we're going to talk about that. But before we get into it too much, I want to ask you, how was your last week? How was your week of reselling? Anything fun?
Well, in resell, I'm just going to say again, the booth has surpassed anything I've had in the past. Yep. I mean, The beginning, the first 3-4 days of February were unbelievable. I've had, let's just put it this way without rambling on too much. I've had months where I've done less than what the first 3 days of February were.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And all from little stuff, buying a lot of like DVDs and CDs up till buying items $400 or $500 for an item. So anyways, so it's been just great. Maybe this is kind of like, the build up to a very dry desert summer type.
Oh no, I thought you were going to go positive.
I'll stay positive, but and so I said like maybe, but for the most part, I think it's just a start to a really good year.
Yeah.
The only thing that scares me is we got a lot of political issues going on. I won't get into that too much, but especially in the States and different things. So who knows what's going to happen? I told Steph, and again, I'm not getting political, Carl, but I told Steph, I said, we can't be surprised no matter what happens. Like if a UFO landed on the White House front yard,
right,
like and aliens came out, like
right.
We can't be surprised. We got to expect anything because it's one of those years where everybody has gone just over the top with it. But I won't get into that too much. But I mean, the only reason I bring that up is because it could affect things, I guess. Like if people's psychology is messed with a little bit, that could affect sales. It could affect either way. I don't know which way it could affect it, and it might not at all, but it could affect the way people think and buy. What do you think on that? Without getting overly political, Carl, just what do you think of that?
I think things will continue on. I honestly think people will still collect things. People will still try to rebuy their childhood again. People will still look for good deals. I honestly think they're just that stuff is just distractions, and it's gonna have less effect than we might realize because life goes on, right?
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that at all. I'm probably 80% leaning towards that. I just mean there is a percentage of things that could happen. But one thing that did happen, some of the guys that have been doing this for years, and this is back before eBay and stuff, they've been doing it in the form of like antique booths and big antique shows and stuff like that. They've said that some of their best times were in recession times. So, yeah. And they also say things like, who are they? But I mean, you've heard it on the news and different things, but like in investment and stuff, things in bad times like cigarettes and alcohol and things like that, people are out buying more of that stuff. So my point is they buy things to kind of make themselves feel better. Mm-hmm. Nostalgia is one area that can really make people feel good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the $500-$600 sales. They can come out and spend $20 on a toy or something that just they can display or something that reminds them of the past. Right. So, so maybe we could expect sales in that, kind of based around that.
Yeah, we'll see. I never had experienced a recession while doing reselling. So I don't know. I think the market's changed a lot since the pandemic as well.
Yeah.
So we'll find out. But
I agree with that too. And I'm not even saying we're in a recession because I don't think we are yet. But I'm not saying we're not going to be. I'm just saying whatever comes, even 5 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 10 years down the road, like if you're still reselling, like I think you just kind of have to do the best you can and tighten up in your buying or loosen up in your buying. It's how much you pay.
One or the other.
I think you just have to adjust accordingly, and you can. How do you say this without getting too winded? I think it's just you just got to play around with it until you find the right thing, and a lot of times it can be luck as well. You know what I mean?
Luck is definitely
yeah.
Luck and calculated gambles are definitely part of this as well, right?
Yeah. All right. So sourcing, I kind of digressed.
How was my week? How was my week, Scotty?
What's that? How was your week, Carl? That's where we were. How was your
week? It's pretty boring. Nothing happened.
Oh, okay. There we go.
No, it was a good week. I I sold, you know, I wouldn't say record stuff, but like amazing. Like I don't know why, but for some reason my store's really woken up. February, January has been great so far. Sourcing's been a little more difficult for me. Not a lot of stuff is coming home with me, but that's okay. I've been going through all my profit pile or death pile or whatever and sourcing from that. So that's it. So now we can get into the topic of the week, which is
sourcing. Yeah.
Sourcing, all the ways to source. And like some of the stuff we're going to talk about, we might just mention we haven't actually done, just for the sake of the list. But where should we start? Should we start with what's your favorite way to source?
I would like to add something first too, and sure. It's if we've missed anything along the way, like you're hopefully going to listen to the show from start to finish, leave in the comments another way, something that we've missed. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
The last thing I do is try in Carl too, but the last thing we try to do is say that we know everything. Like, we're just kind of talking about our experiences and having fun and kind of sharing what we've learned. It's an evolution thing. It's something that's part of the title. It's just kind of our evolving as resellers. I'm not out there trying to tell people that this is the only way to source or this is what you should do. Not even close to that. I'm just kind of explaining what I've learned and what I've done, my experiences. And if we've missed anything, please leave a comment. We read and respond to all comments.
Yeah, actually, one of the comments from last week from Randy, is that tried turning immediate payment off, and I thought, well, I'll try that one, and then lo and behold, I had like one person buying 10 things, and I don't know if it made a difference, but the coincidence was good enough. So yes, we appreciate any and all comments. It's really good.
Yeah, Randy's been really good. He leaves comments all the time. Even the Sunday show, he watches it the next morning. So I guess we go a little bit late and stuff like that, or he's got things to do on Sunday, but he always leaves a comment and watches the show, and very appreciative of Randy for doing that, and others out there too. Please feel free to leave a comment and tell us, even if you don't agree with us or you don't like our comments or our show, just let us know. Let us know.
Yeah. We might say rude things back to you, but no, that's part of the fun. No, I'm just kidding. Everything's great. If you tell a friend about it too, who's into this stuff, we appreciate that.
All right. So sourcing to me, I'll just kind of sum it up here before we start dissecting it. Sourcing to me is the funnest part about being a reseller. Obviously the money coming in is second or a very close like tie, but I enjoy the thrill of the hunt is what keeps me going.
Yeah.
It's trying to find the holy grail item, but it's also fun finding those bread and butter items too. You know what I mean? So
I think that's what a lot of us have in common is the enjoyment of the hunt. It is rare. Once in a while you will hear it, someone who says they don't like to source, and I always wonder why they're doing this, because that's where a lot of the enjoyment comes from for me. But yeah.
So I know the answer to this, but what is the best part of it for you, Carl? Like, is it the finding the item or the socializing?
Oh, that's a good question. I think probably finding the item.
Yeah.
But actually the socializing is actually important for me.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I actually go to thrift stores, is because I have mostly friends there. And and I've made some great friendships through it. So yeah. And of course through this channel too, right? Like Scott, like I would never talk to you if we didn't have this in common.
Yep.
Halfway across Ontario, and I made tons of friends. I really enjoy the socializing. I really like finding that hidden treasure in the common stuff though as well. When you pick up that thing and it's like, why is this worth $100 and everything around it is worth like $2? It kind of feels good. Like I know it's another common trait is a lot of us did metal detecting at one point, and I think it kind of hits the same kind of brain chemistry of the looking and finding. Maybe it's our modern version of hunting in a way.
Yeah, it's the Indiana Jones in part of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of us like history as well.
Yeah.
or we've grown to love histories.
I've definitely grown to love history too, for sure. And you know what? On art as well. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
even if it's not really classified as art, I mean, a lot of it nostalgically or patina wise, like it's very there's a certain look of something that's old with some patina on it, even if in the form of rust or just tarnishing or something, or even you can have an old metal toy truck that's been played with. You can appreciate the bangs and the bumps on it, and
yeah,
you know what
the
I
love.
mean. Like it still kind of rings a bit of art to it,
Yeah, it's like primitive art as well, right?
and primitive.
Like at one point, you probably looked at it as like, why would someone want that? But then over time, you kind of go, okay, I can see
Hundred
why
percent.
this is interesting. I can see the uniqueness of this item. I can see that the love that was put into it. I can just love the artistic and the eccentric aspect of that art as well.
Yeah,
I even silly things like teacups. I've learned like, oh, that one actually is a really well done. A lot of time was put into it. An artist did that for a teacup. Where I can tell you, I did not think about that at all ever once in my brain 5 years ago. Right?
no,
It is funny.
100%. And I'm just gonna I hate kind of rambling on, but that's what I'm gonna end up doing here. I love going to a place and you find something on a shelf in a like a private pick or an estate sale. It's there, and
Yeah.
then when you kind of touch it and you bring it out of that cupboard or something like that, like it seems to come alive. It almost has its own little glow, or you put it in the booth in a certain way. It's almost revived. You know what I mean? Like it's
Give it a
it's
second life. Yeah.
it's weird to say it like that, but it truly has kind of magical aspects. In a I don't know. Maybe some people say, Scott, you're like losing your mind, but like I can agree with you that I can understand people's appeal for certain things, even books and different things that I've never really paid attention today or
Yeah.
before, but I do today. So
And when you've been doing this for a while, you kind of learn the concept of something talking to you, which is kind of what you're mentioning there. When something shouts at you from that shelf as you go by, you kind of get that a bit more. And I've met some people who have amazing abilities when it comes to that. But I think we all can develop that to a certain extent.
yeah, and hey, there's a lot more items that say you're just a piece of crap. You
But
deserve to be put in the garbage.
and sometimes they lie to us. Yeah, I'm great. No, you're
But,
not.
but
But yeah,
but when you look at Art Deco or you look at colors from the 30s or the
yeah.
40s, or a metal sign, or just the graphics, all sorts of styles and stuff like that, it really does ring home to me now. You know what I mean? I can understand it, I guess, is basically
And appreciate it.
and appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got that long-winded part out of the way.
We-
Sorry
we
to go
should-
down that rabbit hole, Carl.
Yeah, well, it's 20 minutes in. Maybe we should start talking about like the topic for the show. How about
All
that?
right. Sounds good. Okay, so well, you start first. Do you want to go with your favorite and then just kind of work the way down?
Sure, I have a long list and a lot of the stuff I haven't tried.
Okay.
Should we start with the one that got me started and everyone's heard of this before, but thrifting?
Okay.
I think thrifting is a great way when you're starting out. And I think it's a great way when you're starting out because there's no pressure. Because you can just go in when you have time. They're open obviously during normal hours. You see a huge variety of items. So if you have certain niches you want to start in, you can go to that part of the store. There's no pressure for prices because the prices are all on the items. And there's competition, but when you're first starting, you don't really notice the competition and you can just take your time. And often you have beginner's luck because you find stuff the other thrifter people aren't looking for and you can find it. So honestly, I would say about 70% of my stuff I get is from thrifting. I think it's a great way to start, but I don't think, honestly, it's the way to continue if you want to grow your business, because there is limits to thrifting.
Okay. No,
So
I would agree. I would agree with you there. I rank, for me personally, thrifting is one of my least done ways of sourcing.
Yeah.
I think my most done way of sourcing, and I say it's probably 60% of my items, and everything else is 40, and I wouldn't be able to break them up. But anyways, I would say this is probably, and that's in the form of yard sales. And we have tons of yard sales here in this area. And when I say this area, within an hour drive, because there are a lot of other small towns which are an easy hour drive, but you still have to drive an hour to get there. But or just in the backyard, like people around in this 5 minute drive radius. But I would say probably and there's a lot of reasons for this, but probably yard sales is probably where I get 60%. And I'll break that down a little bit. First of all, there's just a lot of stuff here. Yeah. Second of all, it's because it's so inexpensive. I can pick up things for literally 25, 50 cents in some cases, but I could go out and fill the entire truck up for a couple $100 on a Saturday. And I'm done by like noon,
Rush sales are great. Unfortunately, they're not year round.
They're not year round. That's a big thing. But I have other ways of sourcing when we don't have yard sales, and I'll get into those.
So do you have any tips for yard sales? Because you and I privately have talked about yard sales, and I'm not the best at them. I find I spend a lot of time running around and seeing children's clothing and then getting upset and then going back home and having to get up early in the morning, which I'm not a fan about. Do you have any tips? Quick tips?
Well, okay. So it depends what you're sourcing for. Okay. I do not do a lot of clothing, although I have found good clothing at yard sales, but I'm not typically going out to yard sales to grab clothing. So first tip number one, get up early, get on the road by, I don't care if everybody's
9 a.m.
If everybody says they're starting at 8 o'clock, you want to get there at 7 o'clock.
Oh man.
Yeah. Like, and sometimes a little bit early. So I'll try to get into whatever neighborhood has a community yard sale by 7 o'clock. Now, a lot of times the community yard sales have been picked over because they do them annually. So there is a website I go to. I'm not going to give it out because I don't want the competition out there, because we have, no, look for that. And I try to map out with it, for the whole month.
Oh, wow.
And actually it's for the whole year. There's certain there's certain yard sales town-wide that I will hit every year, because there's gold there every year. Like it just, for whatever reason, it's an older town. There's always good stuff, or they have an amazing church yard sale where everybody in the community contributes. So you're going to find lots of stuff at that location. And that's, I'll camp out overnight if it comes to that later on for some of those church yard sales. But
so if there's a new division and they're having a garage sale,
or a new subdivision,
a new subdivision, or you can go to a church community sale. Which are you going to hit first?
The church one, without question. Without question. Now
there are a loaded questions. So how do you decide which neighbor? Like if there's no community garage sale that weekend, there's just general garage sales.
Yeah, so a lot, and there are a few where that happens, where there's just none listed for that weekend, and I'll usually just stay local. I have Port Dover, Simcoe, Delhi, Waterford.
Why do you pick those?
Port Rowan? These are older, smaller towns. We're all within the same radius. Yeah, and every weekend there's at least 5 or 6 in each town, and I'm going to say minimum. Like sometimes there's 20, in Simcoe on any given Saturday. So I will hit those, and I'll just drive around.
And how long will you go out? Like you said, you start at 7?
I start at 7.
Wrap it up.
I start at 7. Unless someone advertises or start at 7, then I start at 6:30. You know what I mean? But most people nowadays, they don't start till 8 o'clock. So I'm out driving around looking for those. What I'm doing is I'm looking for those odd yard sales that started at 7 o'clock or start at 7:30, because I want to pick them before the 8 o'clock ones, because I don't want to go at 8 and then I've missed a lot of opportunity, right? There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of other pickers. I've never had an incident with another picker, but that I can recall anyways. However, I know they're out there, and I know we're all looking for a lot of the same kind of stuff, right? So you want to get out there first. So what's your idea of yard sales, Carl?
Having to get up early, driving around, finding nothing, getting frustrated, driving back home and going back to bed,
All within half an hour.
all within half an hour. And usually, I'll send Scotty a message complaining or bitching about having to get up early and how horrible this is, and I've found nothing. I've had lovely experiences like buying something, then getting chased down and being made to give it back because I bought it too cheap. I've experienced that.
Yeah.
I've experienced community garage sales where there's like two houses and they were both like nothing. I've gone to new divisions where it's all just like children's Walmart toys and clothing. You know, they're not my favorite. I must admit. Community garage sales, though, those are amazing because it's just so efficient. Because instead of me driving around, seeing a sign that's up from like 2 weeks ago that they didn't bother taking down, and now there's no garage sale actually there. Or my other favorite is the reoccurring weekly garage sale at someone's house, where basically they do it every single weekend. I've encountered those, and I kind of have those addresses in my head now. But the community garage sales, those are my favorite because it's just like I can hit 10 garage sales in 5 minutes, right? Yeah, there's a lot more traffic and stuff like that. Usually I park and I'll just walk as much as I can from one to one. But yeah, those can be really good. But there can be a lot of competition.
I've never, though, experienced a situation like you where you bought something and you're taking it to your car.
Yeah.
When they chase you down, you either pay more money for that or we want it back because we way undercharge. I've never had that happen.
My luck. It was even something. It was just it was not even something good.
Yeah,
because they did the classic. Well, on eBay, you can get $80 for this. Well, I was like, here, you can have it back and get your $80 from eBay, as opposed to a garage sale. You know.
Yeah. No, I the only thing I've experienced that kind of made me laugh is the one time some guy had a bunch of records. He's sitting at a desk in his garage with a computer, a laptop. And I asked him how much for the records, and he goes, well, tell me what ones you like, and I'll see what they're worth on eBay, and I'll give you a price. And I'm like, and I'm just like, have a good day, and I walked away. But I've never been chased down for something like that. When you text me that, dude, I felt so bad for you because you were having a rough,
I was already complaining about garage sales at that point.
But yeah, I think getting up early is probably the main thing. I would hit older towns. Would be my more favorite because I like the older stuff, and I just find, like you said earlier, that when you go to the newer towns, a lot of it is just children's clothing and little toys and stuff that, and toys are good, but not in when they're like a year old of toys or the toys are only a couple years old, right?
I would never go to a new subdivision because they bought a house, they had kids.
Yeah,
and they're getting rid of all that baby stuff, which has 99% of it has no value.
Yeah.
So I just completely avoid those neighborhoods. What I prefer, like you says, ones that, especially neighborhoods that are in transition. But for example, people are retiring, they're leaving, they're downsizing, that sort of thing. But should we go on to another source?
Sure.
So another one I really enjoy is online auctions, and the reason I like them is I can source from home. And so you're looking at a lot of stuff, but you can kind of cherry pick, and I've always been a bit of a cherry picker, so it gives me the opportunity. But some of my best, like by far my best buys, have actually been online auctions. Especially depends where you are, but like Max Sold is a big one, where people basically, not everyone, because there are resellers on there too, but a lot of the times it is someone getting rid of, they're either downsizing or it's an estate sale. And I've got some good buys from there. Now, that doesn't mean every time I look, every week, there's going to be a good buy. A good buy still might be once every 3 weeks, but it's still worth the relatively little time it takes to do that. So my best buys for online auctions is poorly displayed lots where you can tell they're just trying to get rid of stuff, as opposed to the Max Sold ones where it's like, here's one toy at a time, or here's one record at a time. Those are frustrating. Sometimes I'll just stop looking because it's obviously a reseller. But I have found those are good. Sometimes I'll also check things like high bid auctions. I think private people can do those too, but you have to be you get a feel for those auctions because some auctions here in Ottawa I'll never check because they're more of a quote unquote retail auction where all the starting bids are way too high for me to make a profit. I'm not their customer. So you get a feel for those. How about you? Do you buy from online auctions?
I do actually, and I've been buying more and more, mostly off the high bid. I've done a couple on the max sold, but I haven't really had to go to them because I'm doing pretty well with the high bid.
Yeah.
And not that, like, so put it this way, if I would have started with max sold first, I probably would be doing them more than I would be doing the high bid. So I don't have I don't, I'm not saying anything negative about them. I haven't had to expand into other avenues outside of the high bid one. And it's usually because I do it to a couple ones where I'll take my own stuff to them.
Yeah.
And I've just kind of accidentally kind of been able to walk through and see what they're about to put online. And I'm like, wow, okay, I might bid on that. And then eventually I just kind of got hooked. And now I usually buy about 4 or 5, less than 10 anyways, items or lots per week, I guess you'd say. Some weeks I don't buy anything, but for the most part, I'm grabbing maybe, let's say, 5 to 10 lots.
Yeah.
And it's all about the price. It's not about obviously it's always about the item, but I don't fall in love with any particular item. It's always if I can get it dirt cheap. I'll put in kind of like a minimum bid.
Oh yeah.
If I get it, I get it. Like not the minimum bid, but like, okay, I'll put this is what I'm willing to pay for it and no more. Kind of put it in there and forget about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you want bulk inventory, max sold is the way to go because all bids start at $1.
Yeah.
And often I will get stuff for that $1.
Yeah.
If I'm willing to go pick it up. Like it was funny. The other week I bid on something that I wanted, right? A little spice jar. And I got that. And then I'm like, well, I had to drive out there anyways. So let's see which lots are still open that are cheap. So I just went, oh well, there's a big bin full of Christmas lights. It's like I'll bid $1 because I could use the bin. Who cares about the lights?
Yeah.
So I won that for $1, brought it home, and all the lights are going to family and friends, and I'm going to keep the bin. So sometimes if you want lots of inventory, max sold can be the way to go. I don't want a lot of inventory because a lot of those lights aren't worth anything, for example. But there is that aspect of max sold that I like, as opposed to high bid where I find things don't start at $1. Not all the time. It's just some.
Well, the one I bid on starts at $2, which is pretty much the
same thing.
And you know what? You made a point there that reminded me another reason why I prefer the high bid. The high bid one is because it's local to the area. So I'm like within 20 minutes of picking the stuff up. Where if it's max sold, it's really wherever that house is located. So sometimes because we're in a small, like a rural community, I have to drive at least an hour for anything that's worthy of me bidding on. You know what I mean? Like they don't really have anything closer to me, right? So not that I won't, but I mean, I don't want to drive an hour because I want one item. You know what I mean?
That's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's an hour there, hour back. The cost of getting there, you're probably not making anything, or you're making like $5 an hour. But with max sold, of course, you can put the distance of how far you want to see options at.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but if I put in something within half an hour from here, there might be an auction once a month in that area, right? Yeah. But if I put in something 2 hours or an hour and a half from here, I'm starting to reach bigger cities like Hamilton and Brantford. So there's probably one every week or a couple of days. You know what I mean? Like there's going to be a lot more, put it that way. I just don't want to be forced to drive an hour or 2 hours for that matter to grab like one item. You know what I mean? So that's the only reason I haven't done it that much, but I definitely have nothing against it. That's for sure.
Well, friend of the show, Adam, Shipping Vintage, he on Sunday night shows, Scott sells stuff. He often will show stuff he got from max sold. Speaking of another source that I hit when I'm out there is flea markets, antique markets. Okay. Do you do that at all for sourcing?
Well, because I have the booth, I do in the antique market, I do frequently walk the floors and look at other vendor stuff
Yeah.
and if I find something that I think I can make a few bucks on, I'll buy it and to resell it online.
What I find hilarious is like almost every 2 or 3 weeks, Adam will find something from your booth, and you get so upset when he buys something cheap off of you,
I know
and
you're
then
trying to get me
flips
going.
it online and like
I
doubles, triples his money. It's just I enjoy that. I must admit, it's
I know
Trojan or something.
you always think I'm upset about that comment, and I'm
Oh,
really not because to be honest with you, I
yeah.
tell Adam to come here and source. I've invited Adam's come to my house, and I'm just trying to clear a bunch of stuff out, and he's bought stuff. I've tried giving Adam free merchandise before,
Right.
And he doesn't. He first of all he always insists on paying something, so I have no problem with that. A lot of times the booth, if I got something that can be sold more online, it's because I'm just full here and I'm putting stuff in the booth. The booth is. But that being said, I don't. It doesn't upset me. I know you try to get me all the time.
I derailed Scott a bit. I just like to bug him about it, but
yeah,
honestly,
it really doesn't. And you know what? In all
honestly,
fairness to Adam, he has done that the same thing. He's had yard sales and just trying to clear inventory, and he's pushed to give me stuff to put in the booth, right? So we have that kind of friendship, so it's fun,
isn't he? Scott pretends it's all fine, but really, I can see him visually right now. His little tear in his eye. But joking aside,
you just have to remember, Carl. I edit this, so I can easily just take
that so joking aside, when I go out to those Maxwell's an hour away, often I will look to see if there's a flea market or an antique market out in those areas, and I will walk through and see if there's anything opportunities available. And I have definitely bought stuff from weekend markets as well, brought it home, and they wanted like 10 or 15 bucks for something, and I've sold it for 80 or 100. It's definitely possible. It takes a bit more time because these vendors are either right priced or overpriced, and it can be hard to find those things, but it definitely is a way of doing it, and it's just another one of those non-stressful ways of sourcing, especially if you're going out to an area or those antique markets that might not be as frequently hit as much, or maybe in the smaller towns. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not really a main way of sourcing. I'm usually there because of convenience. I'm already there. But I kind of want to bounce back. You mentioned the online auction.
Yeah.
In addition to that, for me, would be in live auctions where you actually go to the auction, sit in the chair, and put your hand up, like the old school ways.
Oh man,
those are fewer and far between, but they do still exist. I probably attend 10 a year, and very rarely do I not come back with a full truck. Sometimes I've even had to go back the next day to pick up some of the stuff that I couldn't fit in the vehicle. So
it's rare.
Other times, Steph and I have driven our own vehicles separately, so I didn't have to go back the next day. But we knew, like, there's just so much stuff there. We're pretty sure that we're going to fill both vehicles.
Yeah, live auctions I've done them as well. They're interesting. They take a lot of time.
In the fact that it takes up the whole day, but it's not like a lot of time in the form of weeks or anything like that.
No, it's just I'm not a patient guy, so after 2 or 3 hours, I'm getting really antsy in my seat. Yep. It's a different way of buying too. It's a bit thrilling. Some people love it. I don't mind it because it's fair to me, but there's more gambling, so to speak. I shouldn't say gambling. I should say educated gambling.
Well, I don't.
You're going to buy a lot, and you don't they have the previews and all that, but you don't necessarily. You might miss damage, you might miss things, missing pieces, but sometimes you'll get amazing deals.
Yeah, but you can say that with anything. Like sometimes you go to a yard sale or you go to a thrift store and you come home and you'll find damage. I look at the overall picture, the overall result, and for the most part, I do very well there. Like I can pick up things for $5 where I can bring it to the booth and put it in the booth for $100. Mainly bigger items like furnitures and stuff, because it's not what people can sell online. And a lot of times people just come in a car. They don't have a trailer. They don't have a truck. They have no way of getting that piece of furniture home. So I'll be able to buy, and I'm very picky on the furniture and the style, but I can pick up furniture for like, 10 to $50 and turn around and sell them for 300 to $600. So,
Yeah,
so that works
yeah.
that way.
For people's areas, good luck because a lot of the live auctions are now gone. I think pandemic made a lot of the ones that were left go online. Um, but yeah, no, they definitely can be good. Like the nice thing about them sometimes you get a big box lot, and if you people don't know, box lot means just a bunch of random stuff, generally maybe with a theme, and literally a box, and you can often get them for like 5, 10, $15. A lot of
Yeah.
it's going to be junk, but sometimes you will find a little figurine or something that's actually worth the whole box.
And I always find, like, sometimes the value doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of buying and reselling. Sometimes the value to me is learning. And
Yeah,
I see things that people are willing to spend money on that blow my mind at times. And sometimes I'll find things in the form of a box lot or a tray lot, and I'll pay $5 for it. I'll get it home, look it up, and find out it's worth, 50, 100, $200, and
yeah,
sometimes, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, I know to look for this, in the next yard sale, or if I'm in a thrift store or wherever I'm sourcing, I might find this cheap. I've learned about it. You know what I mean? So, and if the auction place found it to be, like, if they missed the value of it, there's a good chance a lot of people are going to miss the value of it, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. It like you said, you learn new bolos that way as well.
So, Carl, one thing I've also haven't done for a while, but I've done it
Mhm.
15 times, is storage lockers. Have you ever done a storage locker?
I don't want people's old mattresses. I don't want people's
Well,
old dirty
I
clothes.
wished everybody thought of it that way, because they would be so much cheaper, because they've really kind of got out of control with the expense of them. But I mean, you can avoid that if you want to, right? The old mattresses and stuff.
You know what I do is I buy off the person who buys the storage auction. In fact, I think one of my best buys was someone who
Yeah.
bought a whole bunch of items out of a storage auction. I know for sure because I asked them and they said, "Oh yeah, we buy storage bins." And but yeah, it is interesting because I know you like you were just about to say you have lots of experience, so I'll just let you go ahead and talk about that.
Well,
I
no,
haven't touched them.
I mean, what's lots of? I've done it 15 times. I've done everything from a 5x5 to a 10x30, which was like, I put it this way: 10x30s. There's less competition for them because it's just so much stuff. But then again, it's so much stuff, you know. So
Mm.
what are you finding in storage units? I started doing that probably about 8 years ago when I did my first storage unit. So you're gonna find a lot of garbage. You're gonna find a lot of garbage. There's no question about it. And you just have to know how to quickly organize it and get rid of it. So metals that you don't want can go to, you can take those to the scrap yard. Paper, I mean, you could burn if you have that option. You could take to the garbage, or I think you probably even recycle it for free. But there's going to be a trip to the dump for sure. But you'll
Yeah.
find some of your best stuff can be found in there, like jewelry, for instance. Instant cash on the jewelry. Sometimes it's just cash on its own. Um, and
Oh
then
yeah.
you'll find t-shirts and different types of clothing. The problem is, when I first started, I didn't have near the knowledge I have now, and I wasn't on eBay, so I didn't have a lot of places to sell this. I didn't even think I had the booth yet. I think I would just grab a bunch of stuff out of a storage locker and have a big yard sale, over two
Mm.
weekends or something. That's how I first started, and then I started having the antique booth and different things. So, without rambling on too much and dissecting this for the whole show, I just say overall they're a pretty good way of sourcing, but you have to be careful because, first of all, again, don't get caught up in the buy, get caught up in the sale, because some of these things can go for crazy money. Some people, so you got to really know what you're looking for,
Yeah.
and you have to be careful because a lot of these lockers are staged nowadays.
I hear
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, I had one incident where I bid up to 400 and something dollars, and I went to the auction house because it was near where I was working at the time, just down the street, like 2 minutes. So I went there to see if I won, and they looked in the system and said no. and they told me what it went for, which is $5 over what and then 2 weeks later, I go onto the same site and they have the exact same locker, but it's been rummaged through. So what I think happened was they bid on the locker themselves, went through it, and then re-put up the locker, which
Oh
is
wow.
which is a sneaky way of just rummaging through a locker, which I believe is illegal. Like if you're going to auction something off, you're not supposed to go into that, right?
Oh okay.
But other times they'll just take what they want out of the locker and put all that stuff in another locker, and then when that locker becomes full over a number of different cherry picked lockers, then they auction that one off, which means there might not be anything good at all in there, but they'll put something at the front or an old box or something to make it look like, there's video games or something, right?
It's definitely more of a gamble. I definitely have known people who've scored off of them,
Yeah.
people I know and trust. But also heard a lot of people use them to get rid of waste and things like that. So you have to be careful. Like I wouldn't touch them just because it's a lot of work. You have to go to the dump. You have to have a way of like it's not all going to fit into my little car. Like that's the reason why I haven't done it. But for some people, love it. Some people, it's everything they do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, now that I'm on eBay, if I could have a couple of those lockers back, I would have done really well. I think overall out of the 15 lockers, maybe 2 I lost on. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
The best one the one of my best lockers in memory is I paid $1 for it. And it looked like it was a 5x5, looked like a big pile of crap. Like it was just clothing. And I get there and the lock's cut off. It's not even locked up.
Oh, you must have flipped out.
Well, I said, what's going on here? And the lady goes, I don't know. She's like, if you don't want it, and I'm like, well, I drove all the way to Toronto. I only paid $1 for it. If I paid
For now.
$200, I'm probably saying, no, I want my money back. I'm not even going in it. But, they would have just re-auctioned it anyways. But I only had $1 in it. I'm already there. I'm like, well, I might as well take it. So
Yeah.
she goes, okay. So I grabbed some clothing and all of a sudden you hear these mice running up the walls. You know what I mean?
Geez.
They're just, you can just hear them scattering. And I'm like, oh, great. And, but once I got underneath that pile of clothing,
Yeah.
there was some really good collectible stuff in there.
So if people don't know, when you bid on these auctions, you can't go in. All you're doing is seeing pictures, or if you're physically there, you can look in from the front of the locker. You can't go in at all. You can't open anything. And so people try to spot something in the picture to make it worth their time. And sometimes people bid up thousands of dollars, and like you said, there's nothing there. And sometimes you'll put the buck in. You never know, but it's definitely a different way. So should we continue on to something else?
Sure.
So some of this stuff I haven't really tried. Another big one is Amazon returns. So sometimes there's actually a store near me where they buy the pallets from Amazon returns, and then every day they lower the price. So they start at thing at $25, and on the last day of the week it's $1. People do that. I've seen thrifters in those lineups. I've gone once to see what there is. This is like literally at the end of my block, but I haven't done that. Like that's good if you're willing to deal with a lot more risk, because sometimes people, you're not supposed to open the packages, but I can tell you all the packages have been opened when I go and look. They have these big, basically tables where all the returns are on, and everything's being opened. No one's going to buy anything sight unseen. But I think there's some ability there, especially if you're willing to do sell stuff as new or barely used, new but open.
Yeah, I've never done a Amazon pallet. I really have no interest into it at all. I'm not saying it's not a good way to do things. I just don't know enough about it, and it doesn't really pertain to me in the form of old or nostalgia. And I'm able to find so much of that stuff. I don't really have a need to go outside of what I source now. That being said, like I will take on new items in the form of like clothing and costume jewelry. I don't have knowledge on that, but I'm trying to expand. But I'll do it that way. But I mean, obviously, that's nothing to do with pallets. I think as far as sourcing for pallets, I think it's just not in my. It's not something I'm interested in at this time.
What about dumpster diving?
I mean, I would dumpster dive for sure. Like it depends. Like I'm not going to go to, let's say a store where they have a bin out in the back behind the mall. I won't
Right.
dumpster dive like that. But if someone's clearing out a house and they just decided they didn't want to mess around with having a yard sale or estate sale or anything, they're just putting everything in the dump or
Yeah.
like a big bin in
Yeah.
the driveway. I will rummage through that, no problem.
I've never done dumpster diving, but I definitely do see people driving around on garbage day, and they'll drive around looking for stuff.
Oh, I've done that, and the best time for that, and that's an interesting. I never thought about that as a sourcing, but it really is a sourcing thing. Is drive around, so, like in these smaller communities. Probably the big cities have it too, but we'll have once a year or once every 2 years, where everybody can throw their items out to the curb.
Oh
And
yeah,
like,
we had
you know,
those too. Yeah,
yeah, and there'll be like piles of stuff.
yeah.
So when the pandemic was going on, thrift stores were closed. Nobody was allowed to have yard sales, but people were
Yeah.
home, so they had nothing to do. So they're cleaning out the garbage,
Yeah.
the garages and stuff, the basements, and they also had that. It just the timing was that they were having these town-wide kind of garbage collection things going on. So there was so much stuff at the curb.
A golden time.
It was a gold mine. I
Yeah.
was going around and like Steph and I were filling up the truck, dumping it off, and we lived at a different location,
Yeah.
and it had a bar, like a small barn in the backyard, and we put all the stuff in there, go right back out and hit it, just like it was insane. And the funny thing is, we'd see somebody with a van and it's stuffed full, stuff tied to the top of the roof. So there was a lot of people out there doing the same thing. But
Beverly
yeah,
Beverly Hills hillbilly style. Yeah.
oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
That is funny.
I never got to where I was tying things to the roof, but I definitely jammed shit into the truck.
It's funny that we talk about this. Is like we're talking about these sources. Like, oh yeah, I should actually do some of these things. It's like I should like because we had that thing too, where you put out stuff you don't want all in a certain day, and it's like, why am I not taking advantage of that? It's like I should be writing this stuff down.
Yeah, that is, and you can. Again, it's one of those things that you just don't really think about too much, but you can find out which little towns have their certain days. It's usually by zone.
Yeah.
So you find out what zone is doing it, and it's amazing what you find. People just throw it out, right? Like that's why they have yard sales, and people say, "Oh, you're only paying $1 and it's worth 100." Well, they don't care. They're going to throw it in the garbage, so they just instead of taking it to them, they're having a yard sale. They don't care about it. There's no connection there. And if you go to a yard sale where there is a connection, you just move on from it because it's not your type of yard sale, right?
Yeah. So let's keep going. There's a lot on this list. It's almost been an hour. So estate sales. We didn't talk about estate sales, did we?
No, we did not. And I love estate sales.
Yeah. So for me, my experience with estate sales is I get a little frustrated. Most of the ones here that I find are professionally run. And they're overpriced, like severely overpriced. And I would get very frustrated. But I'm trying to add them back in because I kind of realize they don't know everything. And they might way over, just like a thrift store. They might way overprice some stuff, but underprice other things. And if you really want to get the deals, you go on the third day. I'm saying that, but I haven't really done it. But if you're doing estate sales, it's good to understand the sort of stuff you're going to find at estate sales and kind of learn those niches. For example, you're going to see a lot of clothing. You're going to see a lot of blankets. You're going to see a lot of like things like shoes. You're going to see a lot of tools. You're going to see a lot of Christmas stuff. You're going to see a lot of books and DVDs. So what do you think?
Yeah, I love estate sales. My experience is different here. I know in the States is very similar to how you explained it, but the estate sales I find here, they're mostly run by the family themselves. So there'll be that type of an estate sale. There will be ones where they're a little bit more professionally run, but usually they're not they're not professional in that they understand prices. They understand people's buying, so they're not going to try to get top dollar for everything, but they're going to try to get the best deal that they can for their client. But at the same time, they're understanding, if somebody's there willing to buy a lot of stuff, we'll cut that person a deal, that kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
my experience is different than that, but a lot of what you're saying is what a lot of the people in the US tend to find.
Hmm.
But and I'm talking YouTubers. But I would say, in my experience, estate sales are usually run by family members, and you're always going to find stuff. And I'll go back. Sometimes I've had it where they've run it for a month. It's by appointment only, and you just keep going back. Sometimes I've seen it where it's over a weekend, and I'll try to get there a couple times if I can. I've always found stuff, even going back other days, because there'll be a cupboard or there'll be an area or something that they pull new stuff out, or you know what I
Yeah.
mean. It always seems I find, for whatever reason, more stuff when I go back. Um,
My
you
impression,
kind of get over, your senses kind of get overloaded sometimes too,
I
because
do
there's
get
so much stuff.
overloaded.
So you're
Yeah.
going to miss things, right? So,
I totally get overwhelmed when I'm in those places. Sometimes it's amazing the amount of stuff that's been accumulated over the years. I think one mistake I used to make a bit is, I think my impression is, if you're doing estate sales, you should be buying in bulk more often.
I do for sure. Yeah.
For sure, rather than cherry pick. Because if you're going to cherry pick and they don't have, like, it's not like they have everything priced often. Usually it's just they give you a price. If you go up with one or two things, my impression is that they're going to give you a higher price than if you came up with like 30 things. Like, the cost for buying one thing and 30 things isn't going to be 1 times 30. It's going to, what I'm trying to say there? It's
For
like,
sure.
it's not proportional.
Yeah. And I always find that at a estate sale, in most cases, I'm sure put it this way, I'm sure there's instances where this isn't true, but I can't really think of any. For the most part, I can usually find one or two items that's going to end up paying for the whole pile of stuff. And then everything
Right.
else just it's more of a mental thing maybe, but psychologically I feel like everything else is just kind of gravy. You know what I mean? It's free money.
Yeah.
Even though technically in their mind I've paid a little bit for everything, in my mind one or two items is paying for everything. So it's however you want to look at it. But I definitely load up. I definitely grab tons of stuff.
Want to say some of the stuff we haven't done ourselves, but some honorable mentions. So a lot of people will source from eBay. They'll buy lots of off other people. Pawn shops, I've heard they're overpriced, but you never know. Facebook obviously is a big one. Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji or whatever is definitely a good source, but you have to act quick.
And I'm going to stop you at Facebook for
Yeah.
a second. So Facebook used to be a really good one, but now everybody seems to be resellers that are putting stuff on there.
Yeah.
However, I do use Facebook Marketplace to find estate sales, to find yard sales, and to find, sometimes people, especially estate sales, are like, they're advertising on Facebook Marketplace. But
that's a good point. Yeah.
anyways, go ahead, Carl.
Other things people do is they advertise saying they're looking for stuff. I haven't done that. Retail arbitrage. People definitely do this. They don't talk about it. I think it's because the window for opportunity in retail arbitrage is really short. So if you advertise it, it's gone before you know it. But people are definitely doing that. I have not done it. Online forums, and so our private contacts and private picks. I haven't done a private pick. They make me nervous, but I hear some people do them and they do pretty good.
I love private picks. Private picks are one of my best, I shouldn't say best, favorite. So being at the store, at the market, people will come to the market and say, hey, listen, are you interested? This is blah, blah, blah. And sometimes those phone numbers get passed on to me. Other times I know people, and I've built rapport with other pickers, and they'll get private picks, but they're very niched, so they don't do everything, especially new, because they tend to be from the market. But I usually get 5 or 6 really, really good private picks per year, and some of my best profits have come from them, and including the $3,000 or 3,000 books that was from a private pick.
Yeah.
And that's still paying off, both financial, like monetarily, but in learning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was one of my favorites, most memorable. But
Well, that was a pretty good list, I thought. I think of different ways to source.
yeah,
If anyone has any new ones we didn't think of, or anything else we didn't think of, please let us know in the comments. Always enjoy hearing the comments.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Comments are a big part of this, and just knowing what our listeners like or dislike or whatever want to put in the comments, that's fine. Just don't call Carl anything bad, because
He's hinting at something that we're not going to get into.
No, I'm gonna cut that out, Carl. I was just trying to come up with something funny, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of touched on everything that we deal with. There's obviously going to be stuff out there that we don't deal with, and we did touch upon sourcing that we don't touch. At least some of it I don't, and
no, sure. Neither do I. But
yeah,
some people love it,
And you know what? There's always stuff out there, so don't feel that you have to buy stuff for the sake of buying stuff, and definitely don't put a lot of. Like, I'm not telling you what to do. My theory is I don't want to feel like I have to buy stuff, because there's always stuff to buy. Sometimes I'm just in the mood to buy, so I might pay a little bit up for it, but I still make sure the profit margin makes sense.
Yeah.
But if you, especially when people first start out, like I did, you feel like you're under the gun you have to find stuff. That knowledge of learning to where to find stuff is as important and will develop as much as it is the items that you sell. Like, you'll learn where to source and who to source from. And I've never had an issue. I've never had an issue finding product.
No. And I think also, if you can stay away from buying stuff just for the sake of buying it, that's a big one. Learn how much time you're spending actually on a source. Because sometimes when you calculate it out, like we were talking about, like if you're driving 2 hours from Max Sold and back, you're probably not making any money in the end. Just keep that stuff in mind.
And one thing about private picks, when someone invites you in their house, I think, and I tend to do this, I tend to pay more for items than I would at a yard sale.
That's a good point.
Right? And if you're nice to the people and you're up front and you just, usually they're going to give you a price. I shouldn't say that. 50-50. A lot of times but at the end of the day, they could be a source down the road. They might have a neighbor that they've had coffee with every year.
Word of mouth. Word of mouth. We probably even mentioned that.
Right? Yep. So, hey, Betty, I'm leaving. And, Scott was so awesome and he took a lot of stuff. And, if they're having problems because they don't want to have things moved, okay, offer to take it to the dump for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Offer to do something, buy them dinner or something like that. Not that that's the reason you do it, but be nice about it. Right. And it may come back in the form of karma. It may come back to you in that they've told their neighbor who is looking to do the same thing. You know what I mean?
People want someone they can trust, and you build up that relationship and you get that reputation as someone is up and up. And
yeah. And that's exactly it, because she was contacting us based on someone else's reference who has given us references multiple times to people.
Yeah.
So that person also gets a kick back in the form of a gift card from LCBO or a Tim Hortons gift card, or, depending on how good the pick is, but in the form of $50 to $100 gift certificate. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You want people to feel like they matter. Like, it's not just
like, sources are so important, and probably sources I guess you would call them sources, but people like that set you up with a good pick are your contacts. Like, those are so important, and you have to make sure that they're looked after as well. And they'll keep looking after you, and then you'll build those contacts, and then over time, you know what I mean? Like, it's really just respect. Just make sure you're respecting the people that have, helped you. That's all. And I'm not saying into the fact that people don't do that. I think probably everybody, for the most part, 90% of the people do that. But I that's how I do it. That's all.
Yeah. No, that's the best way to do it. It makes you feel good at the end of the day too. because that's what's about is for me is the enjoyment. Like,
Sure. I think if I was miserable at it and trying to rip people off and just try, and I'm not talking yard sales, hey, if somebody's got 50 cents on something, that's not my job to educate them. My job is to make sure they're happy and they get their 50 cents. You know what I mean? Even though I'm going to go sell them $200, that's a different story. They're there for, I'm talking about your private picks, your contacts.
Yeah.
Those are the people you're going to have to pay up a little bit more. You're going to have to make sure that they're happy. But at the same time, it's trust me, I'm not losing out by that. Like, there's still lots of profit on the table.
If there's one final thing I would say for this episode is be willing to try things that you haven't done before.
100%.
There's stuff on this list I haven't tried before. It's mostly because I just haven't had the time or haven't thought of it, to be honest. But sometimes you might find you actually might enjoy something more than you think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. You got to take chances for sure. And you're going to be learning, even if you're not making anything monetarily. It's school of hard knocks, man.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks everyone for listening to another episode. We hope to see your comments. Please give us a thumbs up. Please share and all that stuff. Any final thoughts, Scotty?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. See you later, everyone. Bye.
Have a good one.